Welcome back to the Survivor Podcast. I'm Alex.
And my name is Cameron.
We have a lot to talk about because that was a really, really long episode and a lot of crazy things happened in that episode, and I'm pretty excited. So let's talk about like the first half of the episode here. Let's just start from the beginning. And we all know at the end of that episode, Chris got booted off, but in the beginning, I couldn't really tell that he was going to be the first one to go. What are your thoughts on that throughout the episode?
Jumped ship on Jay right away. He's like, "Oh, Jay's got an idol," and he tells Zeke, and then
Zeke tells David, and David tells everybody.
all of a sudden everybody knows just because Will decided he wanted to tell Zeke, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna build trust this way," and then Zeke is like, "Oh, I'm gonna tell everybody in the whole Survivor Island."
Will's gonna start making more plays now that he's built
Dude,
trust with Zeke.
Dude, Will is basically the worst player I've ever seen in this game. He wants to make moves by hiding in people's coattails. He's pretty boring. He's just very unlikable. I don't like Will. I don't like Will at all.
I think that was a change for him though. He finally moved out of his comfort zone. I could see that like anyone would have a brain would probably like abandon Jay at that point. So I mean, I guess he has some sense.
Yeah,
but
I guess.
I think Jay is probably a very strong player, and he probably shouldn't have done that because I think that's going to end up backfiring on him because Jay still has his idol, and he knows when and when not to play.
Okay, let's keep going with the first half of that episode and the reward challenge where David is like crying and is like he doesn't want to let the team down because he's a bad swimmer and they're like, no, David, no. And he's like, I'm really suffering with anxiety.
Do you think he's trying to use that like emotional weakness to like get people to feel sorry for him in the game?
Oh yeah, I think he's using that as strategy. Like why would somebody betray someone that they're emotionally invested in? Like if I'm being like patting you on the back, like I'm like, oh, everything's gonna be all right. I'm not going to backstab you. So I think David is just using try, and then they're like, oh, let's just go to rocks. Let's go to rocks, which is foreshadowing what happens later in that episode. But we'll get to that later. And David pretty good in that challenge. He was not the worst. I mean, his whole thing going into the beginning of the season was that he was going to be the puzzle guy, right? And every single puzzle I think he's ever been involved in, he has lost it for the team. He is the worst puzzle guy ever. This is the guy that 3D printed puzzles just to get good at them, and he sucks at them.
Yeah, he's just not very good at those challenges. I mean, when it came to the elimination challenge, he proved that he could, he did beat everybody else.
Yeah, he did.
He was able to hold that pole in place, and he stood there for like a good I don't know, that was probably like an
Talk
hour.
more about that challenge because I am having trouble remembering.
Oh, where they basically stood on that platform.
Okay.
And they had to basically go further and further back, holding that pole in place. And then it was just him and Zeke left. I thought, for a second there, I almost thought that David was going to throw it. But, like, he performed pretty well in it. I mean, for being a guy that's only like 100 pounds, that's pretty impressive. Well, I mean, yeah, he may not be good at puzzles, but he knows how to manipulate people. And he, like, tends to do well in those challenges. Like, when it comes to, like, getting that immunity idol, he definitely, like, steps up to the plate.
Yeah, he dug deep, like Jeff would say. He's like, you have to dig deep in this game.
And let's talk about those trust clusters.
Oh my god, that was the next thing that I had written down. What the fuck is a trust cluster?
Then Jeff started talking about the trust cluster. I'm just like, wow, Hannah, this makes me hate you even more.
Yeah, Jeff took it and ran with it. All right, because what's up with everybody thinking that they could create words in Survivor? All right, there's the Alliance, but recently they're like, oh, voting blocks are a thing, and now everybody's thinking that they can make their own terminology, and then there's a trust cluster, and it really just makes me furious that a trust cluster is a thing.
I would not be sad to see Hannah go home. She's like one of those players that definitely annoys me. It was a huge blindside sending Chris home, though. He was a very strong player, and I'm surprised Zeke actually turned on him. I thought they had a good alliance going, and he voted him out. I was like, wow, that's a pretty low blow. But I mean, like Zeke is a very strategic player. Like he's proving that he's like starting to get really into the game. He's like one of the strongest players right now, and he could see that Chris was definitely somebody that was going to give him trouble later on. I mean, what do you think? What do you think about that?
I think Zeke is great at Survivor because he can always connect with somebody about something. He always has a connection with Chris. It was about the Oklahoma college football team because Chris played on Oklahoma and he was like a huge fan, and that's how he connected to them. With Brett in this episode, he's got the rainbow connection because they're both gay. Zeke has a drinking buddy, and it's got the rainbow connection with Brett. You know?
I'm starting to think Brett's an alcoholic.
Oh my god!
Whenever he goes for those wins those challenges, like Jeff's always like, "Here you go, Brett, drink up," and Brett's like, "Yeah, thanks, man." I'm bringing the. He's like, "Oh, I got all this food," and then at the end, he's like, "Oh, and I also have beer and what?" And then like Brett's like, "Oh man, I gotta win these challenges, you know, gotta dig deep and win the."
I think Zeke is playing this game pretty good.
Do you think he's playing it better than? I mean, I know Jay is at the bottom, right, more towards the bottom, but do you think he's playing it better than Jay is?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Zeke is in a power position, which is huge. Jay doesn't have any sway with anybody, except for Will, which this episode proved that he doesn't even have that with Will anymore. So Jay really has no alliance. Maybe Sunday, maybe.
Definitely see that Jay's just like kind of buying his time. He's looking for like cracks, alliances that there are right now. Adam. I mean, let's talk about Adam here for a second. He's been like, I tend to notice that Adam's starting to be like, he's starting to like just kind of like take it easy. He's trying to like blend in more. I mean, I know he's still gunning for Jay though. That's the big thing. Like he wants Jay gone. In the first episode, he tried to convince, I believe it was Hannah. He brought up that they should take Jay out. She basically told him what the real plan was going to be, but you could just see right then and there what his real intentions are, because he knows that Jay's going to be coming for him.
But going back to Tribal Council, I thought it was insane that Zeke decided to turn his back on Chris. And then moments later, after Tribal Council, him, Brett, and Sunday are all cool. They're like, yeah, he had to go in the morning the day after. He's like, he was going to win. He was playing hard, yada, yada, yada. Like, it's like they don't even care that they just lost their number one ally.
I think at this point in the game, it's more or less like, alliances are going to get broken up, so they're not too sad about it. It's like an ever-changing game at this point because there's so few people left. Let's start talking about how the Gen X war kind of formed after that tribal council where they got rid of Chris. How there was a huge divide between David's group and Zeke's group. Can you kind of discuss how that all came together?
Yeah. So at the very beginning of the second part of the episode, David goes up to Brett and Sunday and is like, "Hey, do you know who's playing the best game? Zeke." Then this gets back to Zeke because the rainbow connection.
And you got two huge power players right now, Zeke and David, both like gunning for each other. And I think it's just funny how it all like turned around and like flopped on Hannah's lap. What I don't understand, this is why I don't like Hannah, because she's not a good player. I don't know how she survived this long. When Zeke confronted her and asked her, "Hey, are you gonna like side with us? Or are you gonna side with David?" And she couldn't give him a straight answer. So then he started thinking, I'm like, "So are you gonna go tell David everything I've told you?" I don't understand. I mean, it's not, you're supposed to lie every once in a while. That's how you play the game. She couldn't get. She's so stupid. She couldn't tell him like, "Oh, I'm with you guys." That's how you blindside somebody effective. She deserved to go home, not Jessica. That's for sure.
She couldn't even lie saying, "Oh yeah, I'm on your side." When Zeke was like, "Whose side are you on?" she just basically folded and gave away her whole position in the game. She's like, It was embarrassing. It was like, how are you supposed to play Survivor and win if you can't even lie? I want to go back to the old Tribal Council real quick, because Jay didn't play his idol at the first Tribal Council. He's so observant. He's like, "Oh, nobody's talking about me." So he didn't play his idol, even though he knew he was on the bottom.
That's how you can tell Jay is a good player, when he can read people and he can read the situation and he can see what's going on and react to it appropriately. Unlike what happened in this episode's Tribal Council, David playing his idol for Ken. That was like a huge slap in the face to David.
Adam said, "Oh, I heard them talking about voting out Ken." And it was Sunday. Sunday said this at the Tribal Council, because Sunday was whispering to Brett saying, "Stick with the plan, stick with the plan." And Hannah was like, "What's the plan?" Sunday said, "We're voting out Ken."
That was a very good play. That was all Sunday right there. I think she's the one that manipulated David into playing his idol. And you could just tell that like that trust right there, like between Ken and David, is pretty strong. When David said he wants to be the final three with Ken, he meant it.
Yeah, that was insane. The level of gameplay going on where Sunday is juking out Hannah.
I think Sunday's going to start making more plays now, because like that was very impressive. She was never one of the people that was very outspoken. She'd never tell people who she wanted to vote for. She'd always kind of go with the flow. But then she deceived Hannah and also deceived Adam at the same time. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, because I think that they were going to play the idol on Hannah right there. I think that's what David was going to do. And if that did happen, then
Zeke would have went home.
Zeke would have been gone. So Sunday, like, save Zeke.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That was very impressive. I was kind of sad to see Jessica go home because
I was glad to see her leave. I'm tired of looking at her pink eye eyes where they're just infested, and she always looks cockeyed. That challenge was silly. It starts off with them on an island, and Jeff's like, "Come on in, guys," and they're just coming out of nowhere, like dry on an island, and they're like, "Oh, how did they get there?" Like they obviously came in on a boat and like got dropped off. I was just like, that's kind of funny.
I was just surprised that like during that reward challenge that the green team ended up losing the challenge. I mean, like they got to the end first, so how did they fuck that up?
Who was the brains on the team? It was Ken trying to put together that puzzle. It was just a mess. That whole challenge for them was a mess. And Jessica couldn't get up the hill that's like 3 feet big. That was a weird challenge. I've never seen a challenge like that in Survivor.
It's interesting to see how they change it up for every challenge, though.
What I wanted to say about that reward is, all of a sudden, David walks off and is like, "I'm going to go to the bathroom," leaving Brett and Sunday and Zeke all just hanging out there for like a half hour. He's just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna take off. Later, guys."
Personally, I think that there wasn't anything David could say to like change their change that alliance, because what was really David gonna do? I mean, like he pretty much just came there to eat. He probably should have stuck around to maybe overhear something, but they weren't gonna be stupid and say anything in front of him.
I think that part of defense in Survivor is just being around to prevent talking from happening. David wasn't defensive. He wasn't stopping that conversation from happening. He let it happen and went to the bathroom for like a half hour. Like, you can't be doing that in Survivor. Which is probably why a leading cause to why Brett and Sunday decided to go with Zeke in the future.
You gotta have like eyes and ears around all the time just to see what's going on, who's talking to who's saying what. Because I think like the best way to win Survivor is just information. Like the more you know about what's going on, the better your chances are of making it towards the end. Even if you're not on top, as long as you're within the loop and you know what people are talking about, who they want off, and you can read their body language. I mean that's huge. Talk about the immunity challenge. Let's talk about that for a second here. So what did you think about that? How Jay just kind of breezed through the whole thing and left everyone in the dust.
Dude, that was easy mode for Jay. Jay was like, "I'm a fucking boss. I'm going to win this challenge. It's going to be a blowout." Jay is the man.
Do you think that's what saved Jay from being discussed?
No, I think he was safe no matter what. And I think he's going to be safe for the next couple of eliminations because there's this David and Zeke showdown going on, and Jay's just like a threat, but he's not an imminent threat, so they're just going to...
He's just going to let him play it out, right?
Yeah, the longer he stays in the game, the more powerful he gets because of his immunity. So I think Jay is going to make a serious, deep run in this game, and I could see him eventually teaming up with Brett and Sunday, because I think Zeke is going to go sooner rather than later.
So who do you think has the biggest target on their back now that David's idol is gone? And, I'm pretty sure Zeke still wants to get rid of David because he feels that, David's going to be a huge threat for him later on in the game just because he's got Ken in his pocket and he can manipulate Hannah pretty easily. So, I mean, and he uses that whole emotional card like, hey, he tries to appear weak in order to get votes.
But keep in mind that because he's been playing weak, everybody thinks he's weak. I think that right now in the game that Zeke, he has the biggest chance to win Survivor because even just this episode, he betrayed everybody in this episode.
He basically backstabbed Chris, and he had a huge alliance with Chris. He got along with Chris, but we could just see how easily he turned on Chris, like on a dime. He was like, "No, I can see that you're a strong player. It's time for you to go." He doesn't have any true alliances with anybody. He knows how to like switch sides, and he can find those cracks, like those divides between people very easily and kind of like let it slip himself in there. David has a very different approach though. He tries to bond with people. He tries to like become very close to them. And he's not the kind of person that just like instantly backstabs. Like once he sets an alliance with you, if you're in his inner circle, I'm pretty sure that's like your goal. You don't need to worry about David.
Yeah, I think Zeke is the more dangerous player between them all, and I think he's got the best chance to win right now.
That's why it was so huge when Jessica left, because when Jessica left because she picked the wrong rock, the black rock, that kind of like fucked things up for David. He wanted to go to the end with Ken. I'm pretty sure he wanted to go to the end with Jessica too. I'm pretty sure he said that in a previous episode, but now she's gone, so I mean he's kind of down a man. He doesn't have enough soldiers to keep this war going against Zeke.
This is the only third time in Survivor history that they've ever had to draw rocks because it's like incentivizes people not to draw rocks.
That was ridiculous on everyone else's part. Like with Zeke and Hannah, I would have just been like, all right, guys. Look, we just don't want it to be any of us. Even if I was on Hannah's or Zeke's alliance, I'd be like, all right, tell me which way you all want to vote, and I'll vote that way, just so I don't have a chance of being eliminated tonight. That's what I would have said. And they were all up in the air arguing with each other. There was a lot of disorganization right there, a lot of chaos going on.
I want to talk about like who I think played it right in choosing to go to rocks and who I think played it wrong by choosing to go to rocks. Okay, I think David obviously played it right choosing to go to rocks, because like if he doesn't win this challenge or win this rock draw, he's down in the numbers, right? It makes a lot of sense because it's a David versus Zeke thing. Like he needs this to go to rocks. I think that Jessica deciding to go to rocks, bad decision, very bad decision, because in this game, alliances are broken and made every day, and there's 10 days left in this game. There's so much time. Why go to rocks now? It doesn't make sense. Who else also made a bad mistake? Will. I don't think Will going to rocks made any sense at all. What does he care about Hannah? What does he care about Zeke? He doesn't give a hoot. Like if I was Will, I'd be like, I don't care who is going as long as it's not me.
Let's be honest here. I don't think Will's smart enough to figure that shit out for himself. When they were in tribal council, when David was talking and Brett and Zeke both ganged up on him, like they were like making fun of him. I mean, what do you think that really what kind of like vibe did you really get from that? Do you think they think he's like just a weak person in general, or?
Yeah, well, I think it was like a heat of the moment kind of thing. They're going to battle. They're tired of his excuses. I think it was just a outburst, but I don't think it was anything other than that.
You don't think there's too much into that? Nothing to read too much into that. It was just kind of a spur of the moment.
Yeah. I don't think it was anything too crazy. But it wasn't just that one moment with Brett. He also, when he was like, "Oh, come on with the trust clusters, what the heck?"
I think he was kind of fed up with Hannah too.
Yeah, that whole group he doesn't really care for.
Very interesting to see the whole Gen X Civil War unfold, as Zeke called it, and to see like how Zeke, a millennial, kind of manipulated everybody on his side, who he wasn't originally in a clan with.
In this episode, he jumped from one tribe or one alliance to the other, and he did it so well that the people were willing to go to rocks for him.
If I was Brett, I would not trust Zeke at all. I'd be very wary of him. I mean, like, yeah, sure, they're drinking buddies and they got their rainbow alliance, as you call it, but I mean, like, that's not shit, man. I would not trust Zeke. I mean, sure, you can relate to somebody, but in Survivor, I mean, like, with someone with like Zeke turn on Chris like instantly, I mean, that's just like kind of a sign that you shouldn't trust this person. You should keep them within arm, like, you keep them close, but not too close. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that Brett keeping Zeke around is actually good for him, because him and Sunday are in an alliance and they need somebody to get targeted before them, and I think Zeke is that perfect shield. So in this situation, I think it actually is good for him to do this.
So it actually works out to his benefit to have that lightning rod on top that everyone focuses on and everyone wants to vote for. Hannah kind of like puts herself in that position without intention. I don't think she intentionally does it, but she's kind of a moron. Without telling Zeke that she was going to try to fuck him over, but her body language said it all. When she did that, when she couldn't even lie to him or like go along or pretend. I mean, that really just kind of shows that she's just not a good player. I kind of feel like in the next tribal council, she'll be the one to go.
Yeah, so I want to tell you that my prediction was correct from the last episode that we recorded. I predicted that Jessica was going to go home. Ding, ding, ding.
Well, I mean, technically, the next episode after the one we did a podcast for, it was Chris that went home, and then it was Jessica.
Well, I'm saying that my prediction was correct. Yours of Jay going home, wrong. Boom! So, what do you think is going to happen next week?
My prediction on who's going to actually go, probably going to be Hannah. Hannah's going to like say something stupid to Zeke again. Zeke knows he can't work with Hannah to begin with, so he's definitely not going to be in her corner. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Hannah. Hannah's going to say something stupid, and then Zeke's going to come up to David and be like, all right, David, I could vote either you or Ken off now that Jessica's gone and I've got the numbers. So just vote for Hannah. So I think that's the way it's going to go.
I personally don't see that happening at all.
You think Zeke's actually going to want to keep Hannah around?
I think Zeke is going to go this week. I think it's Zeke's last week in Survivor. And I think this showdown between David and Zeke is going to end. Zeke is going to lose because Will is going to jump ship. Unless if Zeke wins immunity, I don't see see any possible scenario where Zeke survives next week.
I don't think Zeke's won any immunity challenge.
Yeah, so he might be due. But I think Zeke is going to get voted out at the next tribal, and because I just don't know where he's gonna have the votes. He's got Brett and Sunday, Jay maybe, but Jay's will go anywhere.
Jay's in the wind. You can't really rely on Jay to have an alliance with him right now. He's like up in the air. He doesn't know who he can trust and like what he want. You don't really know what he wants to do quite yet. He's at the point where he just doesn't care who he votes off as long as it's not him.
I think that Jay is not reliable at all. So I just don't see it. And David has a loyal group around him. He has Ken, who now has the legacy advantage given to him by Jessica. What do you think about that? What do you think is going to be in the legacy advantage?
I don't know. I have absolutely no idea what it could be. I'm very interested. I mean, like in day 36, that's pretty far into the game. It's got to be something really good.
Yeah, there's only like 4 or 5 people at that point in the game. It's probably has something to do. I think there's going to be 4 people left, and it's basically going to be here's how to do well at the next immunity challenge or the final immunity challenge, basically something like that. And I think it's actually going to be pretty boring. But Ken has it now, and Jessica is going to watch from the sidelines.
We'll see if Ken actually makes it all the way to day 36, though. No, he's been playing it very, very cautiously, though. I mean, how do you think? Do you think Ken's gonna make it all the way to the end?
I do see him making it to the end in a couple scenarios. I think Ken is in the best position to make it to the end. I can't think of anybody in a better position than Ken. So yeah, I think Ken has a good chance of making it to the end and winning the whole game at this point.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens on the next episode of Survivor.
Catch you again next week. Later.